going to introduce you. We're going to only meet one of the filmmakers today, so I'm going to kind of adopt my speech to this. So welcome to this special New York African Film Festival 32, which is the masterclass, where we will delve into the complex and imaginative journey of adapting iconic literary works for the screen. Today's session will be From Page to Screen, the Art of Adaptation, which brings together one filmmaker whose recent work offers powerful cinematic interpretations of the African literary form. So we're honored to be joined by Angèle Diabang, whose evocative adaptation of So Long a Letter translates Mariama Bâ's feminist landmark into a visual meditation on women's defiance in the face of betrayal. Together, we will explore the creative choices, the challenges, and the cultural resonances that come with translating literature to film, how adaptation becomes not only a form of homage, but also a space for reinvention and new world making. This is more than a discussion about process, it is also a celebration of cinema's ability to carry forward the emotional and political power of the written word. So I'll share a little bit about Angèle Diabang. She's an acclaimed Senegalese film director and producer. In 2006, she founded Karaninka, a production company through which she has produced over 20 films. Her work is rooted in a deep commitment to social issues, beginning with the powerful documentaries such as Dr. Mukwege, The Man Who Saves Women. And this was one of the first films to chronicle the work of the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Dr. Denis Mukwege. Her short film, Un Dekora, won the Bronze Stallion and Best ECOWAS Director at Festival of the Pan-African Cinema in Burkina Faso in 2019. Beyond filmmaking, Diabang has played a vital role in cultural advocacy, serving for 2.5 years as the chair and board of Senegal's Copyright Office, contributing significantly to the defense and promotion of intellectual property and rights in the region. So welcome, Angèle Diabang. Okay. So first and foremost, I want to say it was really a true pleasure to watch your film. I was completely moved by the acting, the scenes, the relationship between the relationship between the actors on set, and the cinematography. It was just a very moving and powerful film. So I want to know, with So Long a Letter, this is a deeply interior text, one through which the letter, which is a first person and personal. So I want to know what drew you to this particular text, and how does translating something so personal relate to the cinema? Like, how do you translate this cinematically? Okay. Yeah. Oh, shoot.
Thank you, and thank you for the audience. Merci à l'audience d'être présente.
Oh yeah. This one and then
Thank you for coming today. Yeah, I'm happy to be here with you, and I was happy to premiere the film in the US yesterday, and I was more happy that j'étais encore plus contente que l'audience et on ait une si belle accueil là pour le film.
I was even happier that the audience had. I was even happier that the audience actually really liked the film.
Donc, je salue la présence de Aziz Diallo, co-producteur.
Welcome to the co-producer of the film, Aziz Diallo.
Donc voilà, qui est burkinabé, mais qui vit au Côte d'Ivoire, et que la Côte d'Ivoire est aussi coproducteur du film, pareil que l'Égypte. Et je suis contente d'avoir un film qui est majoritairement où il y a une coproduction sud-sud.
I'm really happy that the film has as many South countries as possible as producers, and Aziz is from Burkina, and he's also from the Ivory Coast, and Burkina is a co-producer of the film.
Egypt also.
And Egypt as well.
Okay. And ce qui m'a amené à ce livre, c'est vrai que en Afrique de l'Ouest, on étudie les livres au collège.
In West Africa, we study books in high school, primary school, and so what brought me to making this film is
This book particularly, it's an obligation. C'est une obligation de lire une musique anglaise quand on est au collège.
It's like a rule that when we're in high school we have to read this book Solo Me Letter.
Oui, mais on le lit. Après, comme on est dans l'obligation de le lire, on le lit comme ça. Et c'est en grandissant qu'on se rend compte que ce livre revient beaucoup dans notre vie et influence même notre vie et nos choix de vie.
So when we are in school, we're sort of forced to read this book, so we don't really appreciate it. And then as we grow older, the book keeps coming back into our lives, and then we discover it in different ways.
Exactement. Et je suis devenue cinéaste. Ce livre continuait à m'accompagner. Et à un moment, je me suis dit, déjà, les jeunes ne lisent plus.
So I've become a director, and this book kept following me. And I realized young people don't read anymore.
On était beaucoup sur l'image de téléphone.
We're always on phones and, attached to an image in a way.
Et je me suis dit, reprendre les monuments de la littérature africaine, les grands livres de la littérature africaine et les adapter à l'écran pour réconcilier les jeunes avec la lecture.
And I thought maybe adapting the important books of our continent could make young people attach themselves and be reconnected to those books through film.
Exactement, et je suis à chaque fois content que quelqu'un, quand il voit le film, il dit, je vais aller relire le livre ou je vais le lire.
It makes me really happy that every time a young person sees this film, they think, okay, I'm going to go back to reading the book.
Thank you. And I'm curious how many people have gotten a chance to see the film? Okay, so can you give us a quick recap of what the film is about, and then I'll get more into the question. So maybe just a brief recap in your words about what this film is.
Okay, the film is le film. Le livre, je pense que les gens savent de quoi ça parle, mais pour résumer le film.
I think that people know what the film talks about.
Le livre.
The book talks about, but in order to summarize the film.
Yeah. Je pense que le film parle d'une femme qui fait un chemin.
I think the film talks about a woman who goes through who makes her own path.
Yeah. Pour trouver sa voie dans les règles socio-culturelles qui sont trop patriarcales.
To find her own way throughout the socio-cultural rules that are too patriarchal.
C'est ça. Elle se dit, je suis une femme moderne sénégalaise, mais j'ai envie de toujours être attachée à ma tradition tout en étant moderne. Donc comment trouver l'équilibre entre mon ancrage dans ma culture sénégalaise et la modernité qui me permet de dire je vais être qui je veux.
She tells herself that she's a modern woman, but she
Donc en fait elle se dit je suis une femme ancrée sénégalaise.
So she's telling herself that she's like a rooted Senegalese woman.
Et je veux le rester tout en étant.
And I want to stay as such, but I want to be modern at the same time. Open to the world.
Et avoir le droit d'être qui je veux.
And I want to have the right to be who I am.
Donc le film est vraiment le chemin.
So the film is really the path to
réussir à se faire accepter par la société en tant que femme.
To succeed. So the film is really a path to succeed to being accepted by the society as a woman, but also as a Senegalese woman, and so how to connect the two of those.
Et d'être une femme non mariée.
And also while being an unmarried woman.
And I think that the way that you dealt with those complexities of being, you know, a woman in a society, especially balancing religion, tradition, and then the effects of colonialism and how to go past that, it was such a battle. And so something that you did that was really interesting to me, and one of my questions for you is what complexities or challenges did you face in interpreting the film? Because something that I noticed as I started reading the book and the way that Mariama opens the book, she gives us so much in that, you know, she tells us a lot about what's happening and then she takes us through her journey. And you opened your film with an important conversation between the main character and her husband, but then you took us to the classroom and you highlighted a prominent Senegalese person who, Aline Sitoé, who fought against colonialism, you know, a very important person in the history of Senegal. So I'm interested in what decisions did you make creatively in doing this translation? What challenges did you face? You didn't have Mariama to say, like, if we spoke to Awam Amkpa, the other filmmaker, he actually spoke to Wole Soyinka about this interpretation of his book. But Mariama Bâ is long past and all we have is her text. So can you talk about that negotiation, what decisions you made and the challenges, were there parts where you weren't sure, like that journey?
Oui, c'était pas facile
It wasn't easy to adapt such a book.
Parce que comme j'ai dit hier, tout le monde l'adore.
Because as I said yesterday, everyone loves this book.
Chacun veut voir son.
And everyone wants to see their own version of the film.
Exactement. Mais c'était, ce qui n'était pas facile, c'était dans le livre, comme elle le dit, on commence les mots et moi.
So what's not easy, like she said it in the book, that we start the book and the husband is dead.
C'est ça. Mais moi, je voulais d'abord qu'on s'attache au couple.
But I wanted, for me, in the film, I wanted people to focus primarily on the couple.
De voir comment ils sont soudés, comment ils sont.
And to see how they're like complementary to each other and how they're connected.
Exactement. Et de voir aussi quelles sont les références du personnage principal, Ramatoulaye.
And also to see what are the references of the lead person, the lead character in the film, Ramatoulaye.
Bien sûr, c'est pas ces références dans le livre, mais c'est mes références à moi, Angèle, à l'Institut qui était la jardin de la Casamance.
Of course, these are not the references of the book, but these are my references as Angèle and.
Aline Sitoé. Aline Sitoé.
C'est qui?
Aline Sitoé, c'était une figure qui s'est battue contre le colonialisme en Casamance.
And the same references to Aline Sitoé, who is a figure who fought in Casamance in Senegal.
Elle s'est battue contre le colonialisme.
And she fought against colonialism.
Ce qui n'était pas commun parce que c'était une femme.
Which wasn't common because she was a woman.
Et a young woman.
And a young woman.
Exactement. Et c'était important parce que quand le film commence, Ramatoulaye nous la présente, mais elle nous dit que c'était une rebelle.
And it's important because when the film starts, Ramatoulaye tells us that she introduces her as a character, but she says that she was a rebel.
Et ce que Ramatoulaye a envie d'être.
Which is what Ramatoulaye wants to be.
Elle avait l'impression que pour réussir à être ce qu'elle devait être, quelque part, il fallait qu'elle se rebelle un peu.
So she felt like in order to succeed and to be where she wants to be, she feels that she has to rebel a little bit.
C'est ça. Et une fois que les gens se sont attachés beaucoup à Ramatoulaye en tant qu'enseignante, à sa famille, et à voir vivre tout ça dans la famille, maintenant le film commence.
And once she realizes that
Quand le public
when the public attaches itself to the couple and to the family, and she finds her co-wife, then she feels that then the film can start.
Yeah. Parce que le public voit la future co-épouse comme une membre de la famille.
Because the audience sees and considers the co-wife as a member of the family.
Donc quand on la découvre après qu'elle vient épouser le papa de la famille, c'est
So when we discover that she comes to marry the father of the family, it's more difficult because we find this out later.
C'est ça. Et puis du coup, la mort vient bien après.
And so doing the death comes later.
Oui, quand la femme décide quelque part pardonner son homme qui l'a trahi, qui lui a fait du mal.
When the wife decides to forgive her husband who hurt her for the good of the family.
Et là, la mort vient. La mort.
And then the death comes.
Elle découvre encore que c'était plus dur que ce qu'elle
And she discovers that it's even harder than what she had imagined.
La trahison était plus dure.
The treason was harder.
I'm also interested in some of the ideas that you brought forward in the film, such as, you know, dealing with this challenge of having a co-wife, expressing oneself as a woman, saying, you know, the young girl wanted to go to college and she was forced to marry this man by her mother, right? So I'm thinking about, you know, this happening within a historical time. We're talking about right after independence, right? And the layers of that. And how do you think this story is relevant to people in Senegal now or globally? Like, how do you think it fits into the landscape of knowledge, and what do you hope that people take away from the film?
Okay, no. You that it's now. It's if it's
Or the film itself, how is the film relevant today? Like for young people who are.
Ok, non, je dirais que c'est, bien sûr, ça a évolué.
Of course, it's evolved.
Oui, le mariage forcé, c'est de moins en moins.
Forced wedding is, you know, less and less happening these days.
Mais ça existe toujours.
But it still exists. Partly for economical reasons.
Donc, ce qu'on voit dans le film, que maman pousse sa fille à se marier à un homme riche pour changer les situations de la famille, ça, c'est un truc.
So what we see in the film, that a mother forces her daughter to get married to someone for their situation to change, that unfortunately still exists to this day. I mean, she didn't say unfortunately.
Oui, parce que c'est du matérialisme, c'est pas forcément la tradition.
This is not necessarily tradition, it's materialism.
Right. Yeah, and I think that that's one of the complexities is like when we look at, because something I took away from the film was we're negotiating our freedoms, right? But then some people are relying on these systems that are not necessarily the truth. Like, we're gonna use tradition, but this is not the tradition. You're making this up. You know what I mean? And I think that that's where the complexities were, and I love the way that you dealt with that in the film. And I think about today, like how in any society, tradition is manipulated, and you know, so I thought it was definitely a relevant conversation globally about how we negotiate tradition and how tradition evolves with people and time. Yeah, which is in a very important.
Et dans le film, d'ailleurs, il y a Dramatulai à la fin, à la fin du film, quand le frère de son mari vient lui demander un mariage parce que la tradition voulait qu'il hérite de la femme de son frère, elle dit non.
So, c'est la fin du film?
Oui, la fin.
Il y a des gens qui n'ont pas vu le film, c'est pas grave.
Non, c'est pas grave. Vers la fin du film.
Okay, at the end of the film, spoiler, when the
non, en fait, je ne vais pas forcément spoiler parce que c'est que le mari, quand il dit la tradition,
when the husband talks about the tradition dying,
et le frère du mari
the brother of the husband
demande à hériter
asks to inherit. He asks to inherit of the wife as his wife,
Yes. C'est de la tradition.
which is tradition.
Mais elle, comme elle avait fini de faire son chemin de liberté, elle dit jamais de la vie.
But because she had already finished her path to freedom, she says never. Like she's just like not down for it.
C'est ça. Et au même moment, la maman de Bintou
And at the same time, Bintu's mother
utilise les ruses de la tradition pour forcer sa fille à épouser l'homme riche.
uses the facets of the traditions to force her daughter to marry this rich person. So she's basically doing the opposite than she would want to do
Même
for
si c'est
herself.
pour des questions économiques,
Even if it's for economic
elle lui
reasons.
fait croire que comme c'est sa maman, tu dois respecter.
Yeah, she makes her daughter like think that because I'm your mother, you have to respect me.
Yeah, so the other question that I had is, can you talk about some of the joys and challenges, just technically, making films in Senegal, right? What is that, can you talk about what that experience is?
dirais que c'est facile, c'est difficile.
It's easy, but it's difficult.
Parce que, bien sûr, dans la majeure partie des pays du Sud, c'est difficile d'avoir de l'argent.
Because obviously in most countries of the South, it's difficult to have money to make films.
Mais comme je dis à chaque fois, le problème n'est pas l'argent, le problème c'est comment tu
As
réussis.
I say every time, the problem is not money, but it's how
Comment tu, le challenge artistique, comment tu réussis à faire des choses avec le peu d'argent.
how do you succeed in making things with the little amount of money that one has.
Mais pour moi, la difficulté est plus là, parce que tu sais, en commençant, que tu auras moins d'argent.
For me, the difficulty is lies more in the fact that you know right when you start that you will have access to less money.
Donc le challenge est plus artistique que financier.
So the challenge is more artistic than financial.
C'est ça, et donc pour faire ce film-là, bien sûr c'était un long chemin, mais une fois qu'on a décidé de tourner,
So to make this film, of course, it was a long, it was a long way. But once we decided to shoot,
c'était comment faire pour que on réussisse et les couleurs, les costumes, le décor,
we were more focused on how to succeed the colors, the costumes, the sets, the production design,
la caméra,
the camera.
et qu'on n'avait que 6 semaines de tournage, comment faire pour tout réussir.
How can we make everything fit into 6 weeks, given the financial aspect of it?
Et aussi les acteurs, parce que je me disais que si
And
les
also the
acteurs
actors,
sont bons
because I was telling myself that if the actors are good
et qu'ils transmettent l'émotion qu'il faut, alors le film va plaire.
and they share the right emotion on screen, then the film will be, people will connect to the film.
Ça, et on a donc fait des moments de répétition
So we rehearsed a lot beforehand
pour pouvoir avoir le résultat
in order to achieve what I
plus facile quand
wanted, and so that it's also easier when we shoot.
Did you have the lead actor in mind, the actors in mind while you were writing the film, or how did you come to the actors in the film?
Non, c'était pas elle qui était dans ma tête.
No, she wasn't the lead actress that I had in mind.
Celle que j'avais en tête,
The one I had in mind that I actually
sur les dossiers,
had in my files
c'était une actrice sénégalaise qui vit en Belgique, Awam Amkpa.
was a Senegalese actress who lives in Belgium, and her name is Wole Soyinka.
Voilà, elle a été longtemps
She has been for a long time my
icône.
fairy.
C'est ça. Mais en fait, comme le film a duré du temps pour le faire,
But
2 ans,
since it was really difficult to make this film, I mean, it was a long time to get it to start. It was 12 years.
elle avait vieilli.
She had grown older.
C'est ça. Elle a maintenant plus de 70 ans.
Now she's
Donc,
over 70, so
elle ne faisait plus une femme de 50 ans.
right, she didn't really look like a 50-year-old woman.
Et c'est comme ça que je cherchais.
That's how I started looking for another actress.
I mean, filmmaking is such a dedication. We're talking about 12 years to make a film, 22 years to make a film. How are you negotiating time? As you're working, have this film in the work, what else are you doing? You know, how are you negotiating where the funds will go? Are you working on multiple films at the same time? Can you talk about that process and how?
En fait, moi, ce qui me permettait de tenir,
So what helped me not give up in a way
c'était le fait que je produise aussi.
was the fact that I'm also a producer.
Et à chaque fois qu'il y avait un sérieux problème
And every time there was a serious problem
avec une seule enveloppe,
with this film, A So Long a Letter,
quand j'avais fini de déprimer,
when I was done being depressed and sad,
je me mettais dans un projet en tant que productrice.
I would work on a different project as a producer.
Et ça, c'était vraiment l'équilibre que j'ai trouvé pour tenir.
And this is really the balance that I found to hang on.
Et j'adore produire, donc ça me
I love
remplissait les batteries.
producing, so it was filling my batteries.
And then j'avais encore de l'énergie pour courir derrière une série.
And then I would somehow find the energy to keep working on So Long a Letter.
And then, so now that the film is done, and you know, even thinking about your previous films, even for younger filmmakers who may be in the audience or watching this, how are you dealing with distribution? And you know, what are the challenges and you know, opportunities for distribution of the film now that it's done?
C'est actuellement la deuxième partie.
It's currently an issue, I mean, something that's being difficult.
Mais distribuer des films à l'Afrique, c'est compliqué, mais je pense qu'il y a un problème comme une poisse qui marche avec ces films-là. Il y a toujours des difficultés à acheter.
But there's, I mean, finding distribution for African films is already difficult, but with this film, there's always something difficult.
Yeah, each step of this film, you have a real problem. And that's why finding a distribution actually is very difficult.
Okay. I'm curious about, can you take us into the day, one day on set? What was one surprise and how did you deal with it? Like one thing that happened, one challenge, and how did you deal with it? So we can understand this world of filmmaking and
Je peux parler des funérailles.
I can talk about the funerals.
Quand on avait 2 jours, 3 jours pour filmer les funérailles.
We had 3 days to film the funeral
Avec plus d'une centaine de figurants.
with over 100 extras every day.
Bien, et c'était marrant parce que c'était comme de vraies funérailles.
And it was funny because it was like real funeral.
Les gens étaient vraiment émus.
People were really moved.
Et certains techniciens le soir, surtout qu'il y avait eu des décès.
And some technicians, especially because there had been some funerals after or before, some technicians would cry at night.
Yeah, parce que c'était vraiment, on avait l'impression que pendant ces 3 jours,
Because we really felt like during those 3 days,
on était vraiment dans
you were really in like a real funeral burial.
C'est ça, comme si le mot de femme qu'on avait lu pendant toutes ces années qui était décédé, était vraiment décédé ce jour-là.
As if that,
Le mot de femme.
as if Mujafal, the character, had actually been deceased that same day, even though he had passed a really long time ago.
Donc voilà, ça, les funérailles étaient
So the funerals were very intense.
And it came across in the film. Like I really felt those funerals with it, especially just the breaking down and the crying. And it made me think about how intense funerals are in many, West African countries. Like I know with my grandmother, it could take a whole week, to do a funeral. So you really did a good job in relaying that. Also, I'm curious about in the landscape of filmmaking, what Senegalese directors are you excited about? Actors or cinematographers are you excited about, like up and coming?
Est-ce que les réalisateurs, les filmmakers en général, du Sénégal qui sont jeunes?
au Sénégal, il y a plusieurs
Right.
réalisateurs qui sont
There's a lot of young Senegalese filmmakers in Senegal that are great.
Oui, parce qu'on est dans un pays où il y a un fonds pour le cinéma depuis
We're in a country that has funds for cinema for over 10 years,
et on est un peu un exemple
and we're kind of an example
dans la structuration du cinéma
in how cinema works
de notre pays.
for other African countries,
Donc, ce qui a permis à développer une génération
allowed to develop a young and talented generation of filmmakers.
Donc, oui, c'est très dynamique. Le
So
cinéma
yeah,
sénégalais.
pretty dynamic, and Senegalese cinema is pretty dynamic.
And then I'm curious too about how do you find your personal narrative in this story?
Comment est-ce que tu trouves ton propre histoire à l'intérieur du film? Qu'est-ce que vous avez
Oui, ça c'est compliqué.
That's it.
Et je pense qu'ils n'ont pas envie de rentrer
And I
dans ça.
don't think that you guys want to find out.
Non, c'est difficile parce que et je pense que toutes les femmes
It's
sont
difficult because
attachées à
I
une
think that all women are attached to So Long a Letter,
parce que quelque part ça te fait voyager au fond de toi.
because in a way it makes us travel within ourselves, like deep
Et
within ourselves.
ta relation avec la société et ta relation avec toi-même en tant que femme.
And your relationship to society is also the same relationship that you'd have as a woman with yourself,
Donc c'est pour ça que je pense qu'à un moment ou un autre,
which is why at some point
on peut être très ému par ce roman-là par rapport aux actions qu'on pose dans la vie.
Yeah. one can be pretty moved with this book in regards to the actions that one decides to lead in one's everyday life.
Et je vais raconter une anecdote par rapport à une Française, parce qu'en France, ils connaissent moins le livre qu'aux États-Unis et en Afrique.
I'd like to tell the story about
Une anecdote.
I just want to tell a story in general because in France they don't know the book as well as in Africa and America.
C'est ça. J'avais une consultante en scénario.
I had a script doctor.
Elle n'avait pas lu le livre, mais elle avait lu mon scénario.
She hadn't read the book, but she had read my script.
Et quand on a travaillé, des mois après, elle a lu le livre.
And when we had worked for a few months, then she ended up reading the book.
Je suis rentrée au Sénégal.
I went back to Senegal.
3 mois après, elle m'appelle pour me dire une si longue lettre m'a sauvée.
3 months later, she calls me and she tells me, "So long a letter has saved me."
Je lui dis ah bon, pourquoi? Elle dit parce que
So I asked her why, and she said,
je me suis demandé est-ce que je suis Aïssatou ou je suis Ramatoulaye.
"I wondered if am I Aïssatou or am I Ramatoulaye?"
Elle j'ai dit mais je comprends pas de quoi tu parles.
So I said to her, "I don't understand what you're talking about."
Elle disait parce que j'étais en séparation
And she was saying because I was going through a separation
et j'étais prête à boxer mon nom, à lui arracher mon enfant et à tout.
and I was ready to hit my man and take my kids away from him and everything.
Et elle dit mais le soir quand je me suis posé la question, je me suis rappelé de qui suis l'anglais, je me suis dit si je suis Ramatoulaye ou Aïssatou parce que ça va déterminer comment
So
je dois agir.
when I came home that night and I calmed down, I really wondered, am I Ramatoulaye or am I Aïssatou, because this is going to determine how I'm going to act.
Elle dit j'ai décidé d'être Ramatoulaye.
So she decided to be Ramatoulaye.
Et l'enfant, avec son nom, ils vivent dans le même quartier et l'enfant est partagé à part égale. Et elle n'a pas fait la guerre à cet homme. Elle a dit, même si il m'a offensé, la femme compte plus que tout.
So she ended up having her child be in this co-parenting thing that's very equal, and because she thought that even if this man has offended me and hurt me, I have to preserve my child
And the family.
and the family
And the family spirit.
and the family spirit.
And it was important that the child is between two parents. Voilà, donc, et je vous donnais cet exemple pour dire que même quelqu'un qui n'est pas dans
Giving
notre
this
culture,
example to say that even someone who is not in our culture,
qui lit le livre quelque part,
who reads the book somewhere,
se dit quelle est moi ma voix de femme par rapport à ce livre.
tells themselves, what is my way, what is my path as a woman?
No, I agree with that. And I think that something else that the film shows is that there's never one answer, and that it's so layered and complex. And I think that, in our society, we always think it's right or wrong. And I feel that you showed so many different scenarios and, so many different ways. And then the challenge, like all the women in the film, there were so many examples of women who said, no, I'm not going to do this. No, I'm going to stand up to you. But then also, at times, retreated, so it shows a dynamic, the complex dynamic of human beings, and that even with the husband, I thought it was beautiful how you showed this full picture, and some people were like, I'll never take him back. But then the wife, I just think we all should go see the film because it's amazing. And it has you thinking, like every time you get upset and emotional, then you think about something else. So thank you so much for sharing this film with us. And I wanted to open up for questions if anyone had any questions about filmmaking or the actual film in the audience. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Déjà, merci pour. Oh, sorry. I'm going to switch to English so that we can have a full conversation. But thank you for this work because I'm French and I'm a part of a generation of French Black women who get to discover Mariama Bâ as another lens of feminism. Mm-hmm. And indeed, I wouldn't say that she's not known in France, but she's not considered in academic and media spaces to me. So I'm really happy to discover that there is a movie that maybe could help younger generations to connect with this work. And my question would be, which kind of advice you would give to writers? Because sometimes I feel that as a writer, sometimes we want to see a film adapted, and we don't know how to connect with this industry. It's really separated.
Oui, non, j'avais compris pour l'adaptation, c'est ça? Quel conseil je donnerais pour l'adaptation?
Oui, parce que je trouve que l'industrie du cinéma est vraiment opaque et en tant qu'auteur, parfois on ne sait pas même si on doit rencontrer un producteur ou un réalisateur ou s'il y a des strates, c'est très compliqué de savoir créer des productions.
Ok, et pour le livre en France, pas qu'il n'est pas connu, mais il est peu connu par rapport en Afrique.
The book
Oui,
is
C'est ça.
the book is not well known as much in France as in Africa.
Parce que comme ça fait quand même 12 ans que je portais le livre, à chaque fois que je parlais du livre, on me disait on ne le connaît pas.
I've been talking about this book for 12 years as I was working on this, and every time people said they didn't know the book and that they hadn't seen it around.
Et j'ai passé mon temps à l'offrir aux producteurs.
So I spent my time gifting the book to the producers, to the TVs, to the directors around me.
Elle dit qu'en fait, moi, je suis attachée à une nouvelle génération de gens qui sont attachés à cette écrivaine.
Oui, et pour adapter des livres, je pense que si elle est écrivaine,
So to respond to your question, to adapt books into films, I think that if you're a writer,
je sais qu'au Sénégal,
I know that at least in Senegal,
les producteurs ont beaucoup tendance maintenant à prendre des histoires qui sont déjà écrites.
producers tend to take on stories that are already written
C'est ça.
in Senegal.
Et puis, ce qui est agréable quand tu as un auteur qui est là, parce que moi, la difficulté, c'est que Mariama n'était pas là.
And what's pleasant when you have an author who's still alive, because the difference for me is that Mariama had already passed.
Souvent, on l'associe à la réécriture.
Often we will, include them in the rewriting of the script
Après, si c'est pas
if the writer is not a pain in the ass.
ça peut bien se passer parce que ça devient une complémentarité avec son travail d'écrivain
It
et
should
la scénariste.
go well because it should be something that's complementary to her work as a writer and the screenwriter.
Mais il faut que l'écrivain sache que c'est un autre métier.
But the writer really has to understand that this is a different job.
Exactement. Elle a écrit son histoire.
She wrote her story and now
La scénariste
the
doit
script has to
l'adapter
adapt
pour que ça
this
puisse devenir
into a script.
Donc, et ça, c'est l'humilité de l'écrivain qui peut permettre.
And we need the humility of the writer to allow for a screenwriter to take on that job.
Puis bien sûr, il y a des droits qui sont échangés.
And of course, there's like rights that have to be exchanged. And
L'auteur donne les droits au producteur
the author gives their rights to the producer
pour un certain nombre d'années pour l'exploiter.
for a certain amount of rights to exploit it against money,
Exactement.
in exchange for money.
Mais aujourd'hui, c'est vraiment plus agréable et plus facile pour nous d'avoir une histoire où on voit déjà que l'histoire marche et elle est forte et de pouvoir le prendre.
But today it's easier.
Je pense que dans le monde,
Okay, today in general in the whole world, it's an easier process to do this when you want to adapt a book. It's easier than before.
parce que tout va trop vite avec les réseaux sociaux.
Because now everything
nanana.
goes too
Quand
fast
l'histoire est
with
déjà là,
social media and AI, and when the story is already here,
l'adapter avec les comment ça s'appelle
to adapt it with
les règles de la narration
the rules of
scénaristique
narration, script narration,
est plus facile que de
It's-
recommencer une histoire de zéro et d'imaginer chaque personnage.
it's easier than to start a story from scratch and imagine all the characters for months.
Yes.
Hi. I wanted to know why you decided to use film instead of, for example, making a series to make this visual story. Why did you choose film instead of, for example, a series? Because there's a trend in Senegal where they take like written works and then they make them into like long series. So what made you choose film?
Because when I started, many persons told me to do a série. Plusieurs personnes m'ont dit fais une série
Many people told me make a show
parce que pour eux, une seule longue lettre en un seul film, c'était pas
because
suffisant.
so long a letter in only one film is not sufficient for them. It was not.
Parce que quand on était enfant, il y avait un groupe de théâtre qui l'avait adapté en théâtre.
Because when we were children, there was a theater company that had adapted it into a play,
Et ils avaient fait 2 épisodes de 2 heures de temps chaque épisode.
and they had done 2 episodes of each 2 hours. From the book, yeah.
Donc, cette adaptation théâtrale-là est restée dans notre subconscient.
So this theatrical adaptation remained in our subconscious.
Mais quand j'ai commencé à travailler sur le livre,
But when I started to work on the book,
il n'y avait pas encore l'avènement des séries comme ça.
we didn't really have so many shows, TV shows like that in Africa.
Mais si c'était actuellement, j'aurais fait une série.
But if I had started working on this book today, I would have made a TV show.
Parce que je trouve que c'est moins sévère.
Because it's less severe than in... Qu'est-ce qui est moins sévère?
Les critiques, l'accueil.
Oh,
Moins
because I
sévère
find
dans
that...
une série. Et j'aurais moins stressé en me disant je fais une série que le fait de faire un long métrage.
Because I find that how the audience receives a film is more severe than how they receive a series, and I would have stressed out less.
Thank you for this film. I thought the chemistry of the cast was amazing, and it's probably because of all the rehearsals that you said you went through. How was the casting process for you? The cast was amazing.
Il y a des acteurs que je connaissais, que j'avais en tête,
There are actors that I knew that I had in mind,
comme l'imam.
comme just like the
C'est l'imam.
imam.
Yeah. Parce que lui, il était un acteur qui jouait quand j'étais enfant, il jouait déjà dans ces troupes de théâtre.
Because he was an actor, like when I was a child, he was already playing in that theater company.
Et il a toujours fait des théâtres drôles, comme ça.
So he always was like a comedian and played and made people laugh.
Et j'ai toujours pensé qu'il méritait un vrai rôle dans un film.
And I always thought that he deserved a real role in a cinema film.
Et il y a un groupe de comédiens comme ça, qu'on appelle les comédiens de jazz. C'était vraiment un amour de les amener dans un film de cinéma.
And then there's also a company of those actors.
They're living in another, they're not living in the capital. They have their theatrical group in the second town of Senegal. And they are playing like it's 20 years. They are making all Senegalese laugh and having fun. And for me, it was important to bring them in another level than only making people laugh. I was thinking that they have so much talent that they can do something stronger than just making us laugh.
Hi, I'm a little bit confused. Did you do the screenplay also?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Hi, so I was going to talk about the series. I know you said it took 12 years to adapt the film. I want to know what was the biggest roadblock in the 12 years. Why did it take so long, over a decade, just to complete this film?
Did you
Besides my
you came later, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Trouver de l'argent.
To find money,
Pas seulement l'argent, mais les bons
not
scripts, les
only
bons
but the
partenaires.
right scripts, the right partners,
Et souvent, nous, Africains de l'Ouest, colonisés par la France,
and
on va toujours chercher
often
de l'argent en France.
West Africans colonized by Western countries and specifically France, because France has colonized West Africa, we always go and find funding in France.
Et quand la France dit non,
And when
et que le
France says
producteur
no,
français dit non,
or the French
c'est
producer
souvent
says no,
un coup de massue et on se dit
it's
comment on va faire.
it's often a big, it's something that beats us down, and then we're like, okay, how are we going to do this?
Par exemple, au début, le scénario, quand j'ai déposé en France,
For example, in the beginning, when I when I submitted the script for money,
on m'a reproché que les personnages de femmes dans le film étaient toutes trop fortes.
I was told and reproached that the characters in the film, the female characters, were too strong as women.
As African women, they were too strong. And that was not okay. That was not, c'était pas bon d'avoir des personnages de femmes,
Ouais.
surtout de femmes
It
africaines.
wasn't good to have African women characters that were so strong.
Et que si je voulais avoir cet argent-là sur ce fond-là, il fallait que je l'écrive avec une Française.
Oh my god, this makes me so upset. My mom's also a director. She's also from West Africa, and she's been through the same BS. So yeah, I was told that I would need to rewrite the script with a French white screenwriter in order to make the female characters less strong.
Normal, like
More like
African.
normal, you know.
Yeah. And
Like
it was,
African normal, as in like stereotyped.
yeah, and when you have such kind of retour,
When you have this kind of feedback,
yeah, of course it's make you, comment ça te ralentit?
it slows you down.
Parce que tu réfléchis, tu te dis,
Because you think about it, you wonder, okay, is it this complicated?
I need the money, but at the same time, I don't want to talk about that African woman. So, ça te prend du temps d'accepter que tu vas dire non.
So it takes you some time to accept that you're going to say no to what they have told you to do.
Do the money,
And that you're going to say no to the money as well.
et du coup, tu te retrouves à perdre des producteurs
So you find yourself losing producers
c'est ça, qui viennent, qui partent.
that come and go.
Et à un moment aussi, je reconnais avoir eu un bug de plus de 6 mois où j'arrivais pas à écrire une seule phrase.
And at some point I found myself like having a freeze. For 6 months I couldn't even write a single sentence.
Et pourtant, j'avais à ce moment-là un très bon producteur.
And yet, at that time I had a really good producer
Qui me disait, mais c'est surprenant parce que normalement, tu as du talent.
who was
tu es
telling me, but
bosseuse.
this is surprising because usually you have talent and you work hard.
Comment ça se fait que tu ne peux pas écrire?
How come you can't write what I'm asking you to write?
Et puis après, il part, donc tu te retrouves.
And then he leaves, and so
À
you
force de
find
se retrouver
yourself.
seul, tu dis,
alone.
je vais le faire toute seule.
So you end up thinking, okay, I'm just gonna do it alone.
Exactement, donc je me retrouve à le produire.
So I find myself producing it alone,
À le faire, et puis.
and
le
to do it
montage a
alone,
duré
and
2
then
ans
the
aussi.
editing lasted 2 years
Bien, parce que il fallait monter 3 semaines. Je
Because-
travaillais sur un autre projet, je prenais
because I was
l'argent.
working as a producer on a different film, and I was taking the money there to edit.
And stop, travailler
I would
encore.
stop and then work to get money, and then come back to my film to work.
Et une fois que j'ai un montage de 2 heures de temps, là je vais encore vers les fonds pour chercher de l'argent.
And once I have an edit that's like at least 2 hours of footage, then I go back to the funding to find money.
Donc voilà pourquoi c'est.
This is why it took 12 years.
I think we do one more question, and then, yes.
There's so many things I loved about watching the movie last night. I really appreciated it. And one thing that I wanted to ask, or 2 things I wanted to ask about. One is the inserts of the other African films in the film. So you have Mamdedi's, the scene from Mamdedi's Hyenas, which is great, and then you have the reference to Safi 5, and she's talking about Safi 5. I was wondering how you were, because that's not in the novel, so I was wondering how you were thinking about that in your adaptation. And then the other question I have is, since the novel was written in the 70s, but the movie seems to take place, the time period seems to be about like 10 years ago. I guess I was wondering about your choice about the time.
Merci, je vais commencer par la référence au groupe NYAFF. Pour moi, c'était comment trouver une façon subtile de rendre hommage au 26e.
For me, it was a subtle way to how to pay homage to the previous filmmakers that paved the way,
Sans pour autant que ce soit gros. Et...
without it being like on the nose, you know, over the top.
C'est pour ça que quand sa fille lui dit d'aller au cinéma,
Which is why when her daughter tells her to go to the movies,
je choisis de mettre la scène de développement.
I choose to put this Djibril Métis.
D'autant plus que c'est une scène avec Linger Ramato.
Even more so because it's a scene with Linger
Que Ramatoulaye va voir pour trouver de la force.
that Ramatoulaye goes to see to find strength.
Et c'est une scène qui est très forte du film Hyène,
And it's a scene that's also very strong from that film, Hyenas.
parce que c'est 2 amoureux que l'homme a trahi la femme revient avec beaucoup de force et d'argent pour se venger de cet homme-là.
Because it's 2 lovers that cheated on the woman, and then the woman ends up like finding revenge and gets out stronger out of it.
Et dans Hyène, la femme
In
décide de ne pas
Hyenas,
pardonner l'homme.
the wife decides not to forgive the man.
Et de demander aux habitants, celui qui le tue, tu as de la richesse et
And
de récompense.
she asks to the inhabitants, whoever kills him, I'm gonna reward you for it.
Alors que dans Ramatoulaye, dans Une si longue lettre,
So in So Long a Letter, Ramatoulaye,
quelque part, elle trouve la force de se réconcilier avec son enfant.
she finds the strength to reconcile with her husband.
C'est ça. Donc il y a aussi un hommage à Annette Maïderneville, qui est la première femme journaliste du Sénégal.
I'm also paying a homage in the film to Annette
Maï,
Maï,
qui est la première femme.
Maï, who is the first journalist in Senegal, and she's still alive.
Et aussi à Safi Faye, qui est la première cinéaste.
And of course, Safi Faye, who is the first African filmmaker.
Et bien sûr, Aline Sitoé-Diatta, qui est cette jeune combattante à l'époque du Congo.
And of course, the
Aline Sitoé.
Aline Sitoé, who is the first fighter against colonialism in Senegal.
Donc voilà un peu. Et pour revenir au temps,
And to answer your second question,
le temps du film,
what-
c'est ça, oui, il a raison. Pour revenir au temps du film, c'est que,
you're right, it is 10 years ago,
non, it's 20 years.
20 years ago.
Because si j'avais mis avant,
Because if I had made it before or placed it before,
c'était compliqué par rapport à la réaction du personnage. Elle allait être encore plus dans la résilience et tout accepter.
it was difficult in terms of the character. She was going to be even more resilient and accept everything.
Et si je le mettais aujourd'hui,
But if I placed my film in today's contemporary world,
ça allait être la guerre entre Ramatoulaye et Modou. Elle allait tout casser dans la maison.
it was going to be the war between Ramatoulaye and Modou because she was going to break everything in the house.
Oui, aujourd'hui, les femmes, par rapport à
Today,
Yamila,
women, yeah, in regards to polygamy here, are more reactive.
on voit même des scènes sur les réseaux sociaux
We even see on social media scenes where
quand ton mari a pris une seconde épouse,
when your husband has chosen a second wife,
tu casses tout dans la maison et tu filmes, tu mets dans les
you
réseaux
break
sociaux.
everything and you film it and then you post it online.
Donc c'est ça à l'époque d'aujourd'hui, c'est tu me touches un peu, je te boxe.
Well, so today, it's like I touch you a little bit and then you'll help me.
C'est ça. Donc, je préférais l'amener dans une période qui correspondait et au livre et qui nous permettait d'être un peu plus dans la modernité. Donc, je choisis l'alternance, le moment de l'alternance sénégalaise avec le président Awam Amkpa qui a
So I chose specifically to place this in the time where Abdoulaye Wade came to power in Senegal, where there was this
alternance. Changing
this switch, because this is how it would have happened at that time. But do you find, sorry, not to moderate, but do you find that this is specific to Senegal? Because I'm from Niger and people are really fine with polygamy right now there. Yeah, it's accepted because it's still the woman in Niger at least who chooses the second wife. Because she's tired, that's the tradition. She's tired of like having kids or whatever, and she's like, I'm gonna go get you a second wife.
Ah, non, c'est
Yeah, okay.
Often, souvent, elle n'est pas au courant, elle est au courant vraiment quand le mariage est déjà.
Oh, wow. Often in Senegal, the violence stems from the fact that the wife isn't even aware that there's going to be a second wife, and she finds out when the wedding is happening.
Yeah, I found that to be so
Ah,
yeah. Because
what, in Niger?
no. What? Yeah, it's about that she didn't have adults. Yeah.
The woman, la femme l'accepte puisque c'est elle-même qui fait l'action de dire à son nom, tu as le droit de prendre une seconde épouse. Alors qu'au Sénégal, souvent, comme j'ai dit, tu n'es pas au courant, ou même qu'il a une deuxième femme. Plusieurs mois, tout le monde est au courant.
Yeah, different, I guess, just different cultures within, yeah, different countries.
But that's what made me wonder about what was really tradition, like, where did people start making up their own traditions and that kind of layer?
Yeah.
I kept asking myself that question, while I was watching the film.
Mais au Sénégal aussi, on a de plus en plus la polygamie.
Au Senegal now, in Senegal, we have more and more polygamy. Even if we're modern, very modern, it's coming back.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and thank you all for joining.